Okay, so we're very happy to be back. This is the last of this series, but hey, we might do some more in the autumn if people would find that useful. We'll dream up some other things, Karen, won't we?
We will.
But today, well, the focus is on the future. So let's get started. So you've heard what our proper jobs are, but of course, for this series, we take on different characters. So just as a reminder, I'm the Assistant Director of Ops at St Elsewhere. That's the trust that we know and love. We do a lot of work with St Elsewhere. And Karen, you're the head of BI, aren't you?
I am for this.
That means you're good with data.
Oh,
fabulous. So last time, we didn't leave you with homework, but we left you with a few things that you might think about going away and doing. So we're always interested if anybody did do any of these things, if you want to type in the chat what you found. So did you review your narrative? Do you remember we talked about that last time, didn't we? Is it action focused, or does it just describe a number going up and down by a tiny amount? Might you have thought about triangulating some data? We talked about setting interim targets. So I don't know if any of you managed to try out that approach. And we did, of course, suggest that you might encourage colleagues to attend our training if you found it helpful. So, so let us know if you did any of that. But what are we going to talk about today? So this time, Karen, you're interested in how I got on with the target setting, aren't you?
I am, yes. How did it go, Sam?
Well, it went really well, actually, really well. So just to say, I'm not going to dwell on this, but I did download your tool and I noticed that you've got an accompanying video from Nick, which was fantastic. So yes, I did set some targets and we've now got some improvement actions associated with those improvement plans. So that's
did
great.
you have good conversations with your clinical colleagues about that? Is that good?
Absolutely. So it's a great starting point, much better than the finger in the wind approach that we used previously at St Elsewhere. So here's a reminder that we have got a beautiful tool that Karen has developed, and we've also got a new demo video, which is just 3.5 minutes long, that tells you how to use it. So have a go. If you have any problems, I'm sure the Making Data Count team could help out. But what it didn't help me to do, Karen, is help me with managing my waiting list, and that's a big priority at the moment. You might have heard that we've got quite long waiting lists in the NHS at the moment. And also, we've now got loads of SPC charts at St Elsewhere, which is amazing. But the conversations that we're having in meetings, they're not very good. So I'm wondering if you can help me out with these.
Okay, well, that's fine. Let's start with your waiting list challenge. It is a biggie, definitely. And we have got some techniques which might help you.
Okay, well, you're going to be pleased with me because look, I've created an SPC chart and I've plotted my waiting list. You can see there's a significant reduction here. This is urology. So that looks good, doesn't it? I can see I've got a steady reduction in my waiting list. Obviously, I've got blue dots that make me happy, as they always do. So this is looking really good. But I don't know the answer to this question. So is this going to be enough to reach the target of 0 by October 24?
Well, it's a good question, isn't it? And yes, look at those lovely blue dots, month on month of reduction. That's really fantastic. Well, week on week of reduction. It's really good. Good job going on there, Sam. But I do think I agree with you. That SPC chart's not much help, is it? Because you've got the mean in the middle, you've got the process limits around it. They're not really adding any value. I think we could do better. So let's have a little look at looking at the same data in a slightly different way. So I'm going to take off the blue dots. We're not going to worry about that because we know it's going down. What we're going to do now is add a trajectory. So starting from January 2024, you know that you've got to get to 0 by the end of September 2024. So we can draw that line. Now, I just generally hate these straight lines, but we're going to make this one useful, okay? So the first thing to say is, it looks okay, doesn't it? Your performance is below your trajectory. That means you are doing better. Your waiting list is getting smaller than your trajectory. So that's a good start, but I think we can make it even more helpful. So we're going to add a forecast. So based on your performance since the beginning of the red dotty line, so since the point where your trajectory starts, we can estimate the reduction in your waiting list that you could expect if you carried on performing at the same level. So you were performing at a certain rate, you're
Oh,
Juicing
did
line.
Karen freeze
Does that,
there for everybody, or was it just me?
Yes, she did.
You're back.
am I back? Am I
Yeah.
back? Okay. So you can see the grey dotty line is a forecast line. That's based on your performance from the beginning of the red dotty line to that point. Those grey dots tell me how well you're doing. And we can do even better than that. So we can get a forecast date. That's our first thing. But we can do even better than that. We can put a range of probability around it, because obviously a forecast is an educated guess, sort of, isn't it? And so it might not be exactly right. So we can put a range of probability around it, which indicates how likely we are to hit that forecast date. And the really good news for you, Sam, is that even our worst forecast in that range of dates is better than your target. So you're definitely going to hit this target.
Oh, wow, that's really helpful. But can I just check my understanding, Karen, just to make sure I've got this right?
Absolutely. It's really complicated. It's probably the most complicated thing we do.
But so that's my latest date. Is that right? The last grey dot is the latest date.
Yeah, that's your last bit of real data.
Okay, and then I've got my target date, so I can see that. That black dash line, that's the forecast date, I think you said.
Yep, so that's based on your performance, that line of performance you've got there.
And then this is kind of the predicted range, isn't it, in terms of where you think we might get to?
So the most likely date for you to hit 0 is the forecast date, but there's obviously some variability about that. And the further away your prediction is, the more variable it will be. But you can see we expect you to hit that forecast date somewhere around between the 29th of April and the 2nd of September, but most likely on whatever that is, the 10th of June.
Okay, so that's really good news. And I'm imagining that this tick in the corner is telling me, yes, you're going to be able to achieve it.
Yeah, that's what that's indicating. It's indicating that even a worse prediction is better than your target date.
Okay, I'm liking this a lot. Have you got something else to show me?
Yeah, well, it's part of a suite of reporting. So in the middle, we've got this little table. So if you don't like looking at the charts, if you find that confusing, we've now got this little table, and we can look at this in detail as well and see what it's telling us. Oh, and then we've got the SPC chart. But I think you've got some detail on the little table, haven't you?
Well, let's have a look at the table in a bit more detail. So can you talk through it?
Yeah, so it's helpful to see, we can see there the trajectory start date, that's when we started our line. You can see the target date, that's quite obvious. You can see our forecast date. I'm not sure what order these goes in. Oh, so the week of the latest data, that's on there as well. And in the next two boxes, you can see what reduction we are required to achieve in order to hit 0 and what reduction we're actually achieving. So we need to achieve a reduction of 72 every week on the waiting list. We're actually achieving 115 a week. And I should say this is real data from a trust we're working with, so we're not making it up. We've got that forecast date range, which we've already discussed, and we've got the forecast date, the most likely date we are going to hit that target. Now, because we've done so well, whereas we were going to have to do 72 cases reduction our waiting list, 72 cases a week, actually we don't have to do quite as much work now. We only need to reduce our waiting list by 52 cases a week, and we'll still hit that target by our target date. So really good news there. And it's just got all those numbers in which your manager might want to discuss with you, Sam. So it might help you a bit explaining what's really going on.
Okay, this is quite clever, I think. Takes away the guesswork, doesn't it?
It takes away the guesswork, yeah.
So what's this last chart then?
So we love an SPC chart. Well, I love an SPC chart, as you know. And so what we've got now is an SPC chart of how we're doing at reducing our data. So we've got that target line. In this case, the target reduction is the amount of work, the number of patients we need to remove from the waiting list in order to hit that target. So that's our target. We've got our average. Oh, we've got that spread again, which represents the same. We've got that average reduction there. That is the amount of work we're actually doing. So we've already said we're doing more work than we need to do in order to hit the targets. So that's really good news. We've got that grey icon saying our performance is consistent. It's not changing. But because we're doing enough work, the fact that it's not getting better or worse doesn't matter. In fact, that's a great place to be, because if we continue to perform like this, we'll hit the target when we need to. And the simplest way to think about this chart is that the red line is below the black line, or the black line is above the red line, which means we're doing more work than we need to.
Okay, nice. And it's interesting, this chart, isn't it, to see how dramatically the variation is reduced.
Yes, I mean, before, so back in 2023, when we started looking at these waiting lists, there was a lot of validation, there were a lot of big steps, lots of things going on, and actually that's kind of getting to a stable position so we can start to reduce our waiting lists properly.
And I'm presuming that where you've recalculated the process limits there, that's just because you've got enough data and it's appropriate, important to do so.
That's the start of the trajectory line. So the point where the SBC chart is recalculated is the date at which we started our trajectory line.
Okay, nice. Okay, well, I think I've got it, but can we look at another one?
Yes. Now this looks slightly less good news, doesn't it? On the whole, I would be saying that we're possibly not going to do so well this time. You can see that the grey dots are above that trajectory line. We can see that our predicted date range, we're not going to hit the date, are we? We've got that range of dates, and we've got that orange X. That's a big indicator that something's not working quite well enough here. So we're not going to achieve the target. The forecast line's above the required trajectory, and the whole of the forecast line is above the whole of the cone of opportunity. So again, in our summary table, you can see some things. You can see that we needed to reduce our waiting list by 16.3 patients. I know you can't have a third of a patient, but whatever. But actually, we're only reducing it by 11, so that's not going to do the job, is it? So we get that thing that's saying beyond the target date.
Oh, and I can see we actually need to do 21.
Yeah, well done, son. That's exactly right. So because we haven't done well enough up till now, if we wanted to achieve the target from now, we're going to have to work even harder. We're going to have to reduce our waiting list by 21 patients per list.
Okay, and this is the final chart in the suite.
Yeah, so remember, we want the black line to be above the red line. In this case, it's much more variable, and the black line is in fact below the red line. It's not changing significantly. So unless we manage to do a bit more work and get some blue dots on this chart, we're not going to hit that target.
Okay, I'm sad about that one.
Mm-hmm.
I've got one last one. I think we should ask our participants to see if they've,
because it is really complicated, and we've been practicing, haven't we?
We might have been. What do you mean we even planned for these things? Goodness me.
Amazingly, we do.
We've got one last example. So get your thinking caps on. So our questions to you, and you can type in the chat if you're brave. Will we hit this target? How are we going to know if we're going to hit the target? So what do you reckon?
Yeah, be brave.
Be brave. You can only get
Are we going to hit the target in time is the question, really.
And we should say that this has been developed with our colleague Deb, hasn't it? Who has been using this in real life in Leicester to manage her waiting list. Okay, look, we've got answers coming in.
Yeah, great answers as well. And you're all right. The answer "you might" is true, because if we get our best possible outcome, we would. It's unlikely though, isn't it? Because our forecast line is above our trajectory. Yeah, I mean, I think that demonstrates it. I'm really, really pleased, Sam, because everybody's got this completely, and we think this is quite complicated, don't we?
So Sophie thinks, well, we'd need to do something. We would, wouldn't we?
Yeah, we would. So actually, we are only achieving a reduction of 120 patients per week. We need to reduce it by 140. So we are, there's still a possibility. There is a range of possibility that says we might hit it, but probably not. And if we want to do it from now, instead of doing 141 patients, we need to do 149 patients. That's not much of a boost, is it? That might be achievable, Sam. You might be able to get your team to do that if they really pull out all the stops.
But we need to start acting now, don't we? Because the longer that we leave it, the more
The worse the problem
challenging.
gets, yeah.
Okay. And then, well, here's our last chart in the tool set.
It's always gastro, isn't it? Yeah, so there you can see we want the red black line to be above the red line. They're quite close together, but the red line's above the black line, so it means we're not really doing quite enough work.
No. So I need to take action, don't I? And something's clearly happened here, because we did have nice blue dots, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. So maybe the focus has shifted. Maybe someone's thought, oh, we're doing okay here, we'll go and work on something else. That does happen. Maybe we need to put our focus back on this service and see what we can do.
Maybe some members of staff have gone sick. I mean, there could be many reasons, couldn't there?
All sorts of things, yeah.
Okay, well, that is very helpful. And it does look like our colleagues today have understood it at first look, so that's good. Now, very soon, coming very soon. How soon do you think, Karen?
And the tools should be up today. They're finished.
Oh,
so I should explain there are 4 tools. There's one for months and one for weeks. And then there's one where you can put in a great big data set and choose from all of your performance metrics and pick which ones you're displaying on your dashboard. So there's one of those for months and weeks as well. So there will be a suite of 4 tools going up, but they do need videos because it is a little bit complicated.
So are the videos coming a bit later?
Good question. I think they're mostly done. I don't actually know the answer.
Well, I'm seeing Deb tomorrow. So is Deb doing the videos? I can ask her.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, hopefully that was helpful. It's definitely been helping Deb. So do let us know how you get on. But Karen, I think we need to move on to my next challenge now. So like I said, we've got loads of SPC charts now, which is fantastic. Loads of people have done the training, but we're not very good at talking about the data in our meetings. We're still kind of just having the conversation that we probably would have had without the charts.
Okay, and that's not uncommon actually, Sam. We do need to, because it isn't just about changing the pictures, it's about how we think about data and how we talk about data that matters.
Now, I attended your narrative writing training, and I think narrative writing and discussing data in meetings, we kind of need to know the same things. So we need to know about what the chart's telling us. Have we got any special cause variation? Have we got any areas that require attention? If we've got targets, obviously, that's going to be something important to know. But we want to know the causes of what's going on, don't we? And we want to actually take some action and know who's taking the action and when we're going to be implementing things. So that's the kind of thing that I really want to get out of our meetings, and we're just not getting that at the moment. Now, at St Elsewhere, the good news is we've got that data description to the side of the chart. So the BI team, under you, Karen, have done a fantastic job. So well done.
So you've got that analytical bit, but it's the next bit, the so what, that you're working on now.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it might be useful for us to role play the kind of conversations that I'm seeing, Karen. Would that be useful, do you think?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. If you've got your script, we will be actually reading from a script. So be nice to us. And let's describe our characters to you. So I'm the trauma and orthopaedic service manager now. So look, I've changed hats. And Karen is the chief operating officer. You've been promoted, Karen.
Oh, goody.
Okay, so let's play out a little conversation, which is the kind of conversations that I'm seeing across and elsewhere. So got some SPC charts, Karen. You will see that. Now, I'm pleased to report that there's been a reduction in complaints and also an improvement in pressure damage. We've responded to 100% of complaints on time, and no specific actions are necessary at this time.
Thanks, Sam. However, I'm a bit confused. I can see from both charts that over 10 months, the number of complaints has increased. And since December, the pressure ulcers have also increased.
But Karen, complaints are lower this month compared to last month. Surely you can see that. And pressure ulcers are also lower.
But it's not really helpful to react to a change in one data point. We need to be thinking about the variation that we can see in the data. I think you need a refresh on making data count, Sam.
Really?
It's good to hear that complaints are being responded to in a timely fashion. That's really good. However, we need to ensure that we're investigating the complaints properly, providing high quality responses and understanding the themes. We really do need to develop an action plan, Sam, to address the recent deterioration.
Oh, Karen, do I really need to do that training again? I don't think I need a refresh on the charts. I got it, you know. But yeah, I'll bring a plan to the next meeting. That's fair enough.
Okay.
There we go. That's end of Act 1. And you might want to look. We got applause. Very good.
And I'm a terrible actor. What can I say?
Oh, this is the first time Karen's done this. There you go. So have a think. Was that a good conversation? What do you think? You can type in the chat if you think that was a good conversation that we had in our meeting, or could we have done better? And also, got some thumbs up there. Interesting.
That's because I was so horrid to you, I suspect.
Oh, your acting was so good. Are those the kinds of conversations that you're hearing in your organisations? I think we could have had a better conversation there, Karen.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think we could. Well, at least I brought a challenge. That's all I can say.
You did. You challenged me, so that is good. But I think we should replay that conversation. So this is our replay. We can have a think about how different these conversations are. So hi, Karen. Nice to see you. Now, you can see from my SPC charts that there's been a significant increase in complaints over the past 10 months. And in addition, there's been an increase in the number of pressure ulcers. We are undertaking analysis to understand if there are any themes related to the complaints. And I've scheduled a workshop to identify actions that can be undertaken to improve pressure damage care. Now, we've done some more analysis, we've got some more data. We've seen deterioration in mandatory training compliance, high levels of sickness, and a significant and sustained increase in agency spend. We believe that these changes have led to the increased level of complaints and pressure damage.
Thank you, Sam. That is really useful. You've been able to triangulate these various data sources to identify potential interrelationships, and that's always helpful. What actions have you got planned to address these concerns?
So I was just coming on to the action plan. So we have got a number of priority actions. We haven't got hundreds of actions, we've got a few actions. So the first thing that we're going to do is analyse the sickness data to understand any themes. You can see that we've got a deadline there. You can see Scott's going to be undertaking that work. So in addition, we're going to be checking our rotors to see whether any changes. Oh, that's wrong order. Sorry. We've got an awareness raising campaign that we are undertaking. You can see Joe's going to be leading on that. And then, yes, as already mentioned, we're going to be checking our rotors to see if we can make any changes. So what do you think? Do you think they sound like sensible actions?
They do sound like really sensible, focused actions. I'm pleased to hear that you'll be proactively reviewing the SPC charts to demonstrate that impact. Can I also ask that the risk register is updated to reflect the current position?
Absolutely, that's a good point. I'll make sure that's done before the next meeting. So that's the end of Act 2. So that was a bit different, wasn't it? Look, we've got applause for both acts. Amazing.
Yeah, I think you presented it much better. I think that's a much more insightful way to look at the data, Sam. It's really nice to hear.
So we've kind of shown you the extreme end of the spectrum there. So maybe have a little reflect on what end of the spectrum are you in your organisation. You're probably somewhere in between, I reckon. That's my prediction. But Karen, we're gonna time travel now. Are you ready to time travel?
Yeah.
So we're gonna move forward in time to 7 months later. So here we go with Act 3. We're not going to have millions of acts, don't worry. Okay. So, Karen, nice to see you. I'm pleased to report that there's been a reduction in complaints. However, there's been a concerning drop in mandatory training compliance. We've responded to 100% of complaints on time, and we've got no additional actions necessary at this time.
Well, I'm a bit confused, Sam. We've had this conversation before. I can see from the SPC chart that the high levels of complaints have continued rather than reduced. Also, there's been a real improvement in mandatory training levels. We need to understand that variation. We need to understand variation and not react to single data point changes. You say no additional actions are required. Is there an action plan already in place to reduce complaints? And did you manage to attend the Making Data Count training?
Oh, Karen, we have got an action plan. We've had it for a year and we've got 90 actions. It's just that we didn't add any ones this month. So yes, don't worry, we have got an action plan. And yeah, the training I did register, however, something came up that's much more important, so I didn't go in the end.
I would have to say, I feel that 90 actions is rather a lot. I think it would be ideal to review the action plan urgently. We need a focused implementation plan to reduce the level of complaints. Please do attend the training. It will help you understand how to interpret the charts and the data and think about what a good action plan looks like. The workforce team's awareness raising of the benefits of mandatory training has clearly worked. That's good news. I'll get in touch to say well done to the workforce team, the possibility of a wider campaign. Now, next time, I look forward to seeing you improve skills on data interpretation and hearing about your new key actions.
Okay, end of Act 3. That was a bit like Act 1, wasn't it?
It was a bit.
Just to say, we've observed a lot of meetings, and this is not uncommon. That's the reason that we're acting this out. And I think the reality is that there aren't many people that are like Karens in this world that provide a bit of challenge.
They're always unpopular when they do.
Well, you'd be a scary non-exec director, that's all I can say. But let's move on to the final act. So we're going to replay that conversation starting now. So hi, Karen. So the overall level of complaints remains a real concern. However, targeted work has resulted in an improvement in some areas. There's been significant improvement in the mandatory training compliance rates as a result of the great campaign run by the workforce team.
Thanks, Sam. It's great to hear that we've seen an improvement. Can you tell me more about the targeted work on complaints? Do you have any data?
I do. I can tell you. So we analysed the reasons for complaints and we created a Pareto chart. We actually used a tool from the Making Data Count team to create this Pareto chart. Now the QI team supported a facilitated workshop with key staff to discuss where we could focus improvement efforts. Now transport was an area that the team wanted to focus on. You can see there it's the second bar. The numbers are pretty high. People had some ideas about what we could do with regards to transport, and so we had some potential solutions. I'm really pleased to show you this SPC chart, which clearly demonstrates statistical improvement for the number of transport-related complaints.
Excellent. This is a brilliant example of using the data to focus attention and using QI approach to implement change. Please say well done to the whole team. I'm hoping that you can now start to address some of the other themes, starting with waiting times and cancellations, as they are the highest volume of complaints.
So I can assure you, Karen, that we've got a focused programme of work and mechanisms to monitor the data. Of course, we're going to be using SPC charts going forward, and I'll report on further progress at the next divisional meeting.
Brilliant.
There you go. That's the end of our acting. Got a love heart from Katie. Amazing. So have a think, as we've said, about how the conversations are in your organisation, because we know that the SPC charts are the first step. I think that's what we would say, Karen, isn't it? We've got to get the data presented right to start with. We need to be describing it appropriately. We need to be describing the actions, but that doesn't automatically translate into the data driving conversations in meetings.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Sam. We've seen it more and more times. Changing the pictures is just the first step. Talking about the data properly is a much bigger challenge.
Absolutely. There you go. That's our little celebration. We've got about the celebration. That's terrible of us, isn't it? So what we need to make sure is that we close the loop. And I'm imagining that you all sit in various types of performance meetings. So we think about a divisional performance meeting, then we might have a purpose like this. So we might have executives coming along to a meeting where you're going to present on how you're doing with regards to performance, and you're going to describe what you're doing to address areas of poor performance, and also, of course, describe areas where there's been improvement that you might be able to spread. The first thing is we want data to be presented in those meetings, and as well as the data, if you had actions from the previous meeting, which you probably did, we'd want an update in terms of where you've got to with those actions, because we can't assume, can we, that all of our actions we undertake. Now, there might be some questions from execs, senior people. Are the actions adequate? When can we expect an impact? Do you need any help, etc.? We're probably going to end up with some more actions, and probably, if we're smart, we can include some of these actions within the narrative for the integrated performance report that's reviewed at the board. I imagine that some of you might provide contributions to the IPR. We want those timescales in terms of what's going on. And then, of course, we need to implement the actions because they're not just going to magically happen. So that's what we want in terms of a circle that we keep going back to. And if there are sustained areas where the performance is poor, I think we've touched on this before, then these are the kinds of questions that I would be asking. Have we completed the actions? Were they the right actions? Have we got to do some other things? So that's the kind of circle that we would like you to be following. And here's a nice little example action log that our colleague Becky provided us with. So it's just very simple. We've got a meeting date. We've got what the action is succinctly described there. We've got, Karen, you're going to like this. We've got an owner. We've got a deadline. And there's a top tip here that was quite radical when Becky mentioned this to me. It's really good if this could be completed in advance of a meeting, because the amount of meetings that I go along to and it's kind of completed in the meeting, and probably there are loads of things that are actually completed that we don't need to talk about. So quick tip there, complete something like this in advance of the meeting. Now, one of the things that I just wanted to highlight as a potential approach that you might want to test out within your organisation is a different approach to running performance meetings. You're going to like this, Karen, because I know you're a big fan of what I'm going to be proposing. Now, traditionally, we'd have a lovely BI team. We'd have a lovely analyst like Karen who spent a lot of time analysing data. She'd put it in a report, probably quite a big report, and then she'd send it along to the divisional performance meeting where there's lots of people in the meeting, but look who isn't in the meeting. Karen's not in the meeting, is she? Bit upsetting. Now, it takes a lot of time to create that report. There's probably a delay before it gets to the meeting and Karen isn't in the meeting. Now, we've got some organisations that have now started to think about doing things differently. And Morecambe Bay is a trust which has wholeheartedly adopted a different approach, which they're calling a data-driven multidisciplinary team meeting. Now, key difference here is that Karen's in the meeting, and you know what she's got? You're going to like this, Karen. You love live data, don't you? She's going to present data live in the meeting. Look, she's got lots of different charts. And she isn't creating all of those PowerPoint packs that take forever and probably that nobody ever reads. For Morecambe Bay, they were creating packs that were around 100 pages long of PowerPoint, which you couldn't possibly get through in a meeting. Now, we did do a little sharing session a while ago where Morecambe Bay are talking about the approach and how it's worked for them. So we've got the link there to the video. They started off with one care group and now they're using the approach for their performance management meetings with the executive team. It's working fantastically for them. So there's lots of benefits for decision makers. I'm not going to read these out to you, but these are the types of things that people are saying to us. So it's a much more effective use of time. People are able to ask questions live in the meeting. And Karen, you could delve into the data, couldn't you, on screen?
Yeah, I mean, when you've got this going well, it's really, really powerful.
And Andrew was saying yesterday, Andrew, who heads up the BI team, that it saved them a huge amount of time, not only in producing the PowerPoint packs, but actually being able to answer questions within the meeting rather than taking an action away on an action log. Now, there's also benefits for analysts, because I think analysts, you can sometimes feel a little bit removed, can't you? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's much nicer. You feel much more like you're engaged in the work of the hospital if you're used in this way.
Exactly, and you can understand the context. If there's any requests that might be ill-defined, not that that would ever happen, would it? That you get an ill-defined question, you could discuss that, couldn't you, in the meeting? You can see the impact of your analysis. You might even be able to properly talk about some data quality issues, because that's often just, well, bashed away, isn't it? Data quality.
It is, yeah.
And what we've heard is that actually you feel much more valued as part of the team. Now, I think, Karen, though, doing this for the first time, it would be a bit scary. What do you think?
Yeah, it is a bit scary, but you get used to it remarkably quickly. And after all, you're the person who understands the data. And if you're prepared to be open and not defensive, it's a great way to learn.
Absolutely. So yesterday I ran a recorded session with Andrew at Morecambe Bay talking about how this approach has really helped empower the analysts and how it's enabled them to guide decision makers to make better decisions. So I'm hoping that might be available for people to watch. It's an interesting session.
There's an interesting question from Michelle there. How do they handle finance and HR? Because sometimes they're on different systems.
So they did a lot of work to bring together all of the data in one place, even the finance data. So they're presenting all of the data using SPC charts, and they have got in those meetings where we've got the analysts presenting, there are leads from all of those different corporate areas, as well as for the specialty or division. So it's working fantastically for them. It was quite a big step in particular for them to get hold of the finance data, because I think quite often, well, people can be a bit protective around their data. Do you think that's true, Karen? The workforce team want their data to be with them?
Yeah, it can be very siloed and people are a bit protective.
But they've broken down those barriers at Morecambe Bay. It's worked fantastically for them. And just to say that by analysing the finance data using SPC, that's really helped with triangulation. You can imagine that, you know, agency spend might be very related to some other indicators, mightn't it? So we did touch on that, I think, in a previous session, didn't we? Even last time, maybe.
And I think there's so much to be gained. I mean, it's our patients who benefit when we use our data properly, isn't it?
Absolutely. So a few little things to think about then, in terms of using our data to inform proper conversations. So think about whether you've got the right forums in place with the right people in meetings to talk about the data that hopefully is now presented using SPC charts. Now, do you properly record actions from your meetings? Have you got a nice action log like we've seen here? Do you review them? Do you spend the whole meeting reviewing actions, most of which are completed? You could do that template in advance, couldn't you? And just focus on the things that need to be talked about. Have you got that feedback loop that I've shown you? It might sound obvious, but I think sometimes we don't see that. Do you know what you need to escalate? Because of course you're in key positions to be able to escalate really important things that need to be cited by the board, for instance. Does data really guide your conversation? So think about the conversation that we played out here. What end of the spectrum were you in terms of the types of conversation that you are having? And do you challenge, do you act like Karen acted to me if people are misrepresenting the data? That's within all of our gifts, isn't it? If we're seeing stuff presented inaccurately, then you can be very polite like Karen was. You were nice and polite, weren't you? But I think providing challenge would be helpful. You can say Sam and Karen said you're not presenting that right, then you can blame us, can't you? Do you triangulate different data sources? So that was a good question in the chat there, wasn't it, around triangulation? And do you ongoingly monitor things when you've got improvement work going on? So things you might want to do now, not that this is homework, just suggestions. Well, you heard that I got on well with the target setting tool, and this is the one where there is a video already. So if you haven't downloaded the tool and tested it out, you might want to have a go. You've got some good evidence, Karen, haven't you, about trust using this proactively and it actually really working as a methodology?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely need that clinical and operational buy-in to the targets you set, but it's a really good place to start.
Now, secondly, well, the trajectory tools are going to be available later, we just heard. So you might want to think about testing those out. We're always here to help if you get confused. So think about how well you use your data in meetings. And yes, provide that constructive challenge if data is misrepresented. We can put a link into the chat later, hopefully in this chat. Do you think we can, Katie? Will the chat be live after the meeting? We could put a link in here.
Yep, should be. If not,
Yeah.
I can circulate that on our follow-up email.
Okay, perfect. Now, the other thing that I'd say is, if you've liked the training that we provide, and some of you might have done our step training, we've got 10 steps of training. Katie, who introduced us, has done all 10 steps. So you might get a coaster, Katie. There you go. We have now set dates from September to April. We're running the series every 6 weeks. So they will be on the Futures site. But at the moment, they're not all uploaded to our Futures site, but they are on the NHS England events page. You just need to search for Making Data Count in the search bar. And this is a lovely document that Jen has put together that will be on Futures very soon, that's got links to all of the dates that we've got. So you can just click on the links and you can register. And we have got all of the sessions that we've run so far recorded. It's quite nice to join a live session. What do you think, Karen? I'd go live.
Yes, but if you have to miss one, it's a good way to fill in the gaps, isn't it?
And also all of the steps are CPD accredited. So you've got the potential there for 10 CPD points. How amazing is that? So if you're not a member of the Futures site, please sign up. I think we're about 12,500 people now, remarkably. When I checked Facebook a few days ago, it reminded me that we started with about 230 6 years ago. So that's quite a growth, just like the Proud2bOps network. And remember that you can order little guides from us. I've still got a few boxes in my haul. So if you haven't got a hard copy guide, you can order your own guides. You can order spuddling cards. If you don't know what spuddling is, then you do need to definitely attend our step training. But that's all. So that's all, folks. And look, Karen, that's making data count colours, including
Very pretty, Samantha. Very pretty.